Well, Australia's map out of COVID is already in doubt. Queensland and WA's leaders saying they might keep their borders shut for a lot longer, particularly to New South Wales. Joining me live now, Liberal MP Jason Falinski, of course, from New South Wales. Thanks for your time. This roadmap out, if states don't agree, it's not much of a map. It's in serious doubt right now, isn't it?
It absolutely is, Tom, and that's why I think National Cabinet should drop the second part of the plan, which is that a 70% national average. I think as states reach 70%, they should be allowed to free their people and allow the people in those states to get back to where their normal lives, because the real cost of this lockdown is not just economic. In fact, it's mainly a human cost. It's children not being at school, it's families being kept apart, people from work, and good businesses going bad. This is not good for anyone, and to have two states holding the rest of the nation to ransom is not appropriate and should not be allowed to continue.
So what you're saying is that New South Wales at 70% vaccination, double dose rate, would essentially open up because they're not going to be allowed into a lot of other states anyway. Is that specifically what you're proposing?
Well, not just New South Wales, any state, frankly. I mean, if Mark McGowan wants to turn Western Australia into the Kingdom of Narnia, that's completely up to him and his 100-year winter. But the fact is, the rest of Australia, when they are able to get to that 70%, those states, those people in those states should be allowed to get back to their normal lives so that families can come back together again, good businesses can get back to business, children can go back to school, the mental health problems that this is creating can be alleviated, and our nation can go back to being whole again.
70% under the Doherty modelling creates a lot more cases, a lot more strain on hospitals and a lot more deaths as well, doesn't it?
It does, Tom, but the fact is that full vaccination, whether it is here or around the world, was never about eliminating the virus, just as flu vaccinations are not about eliminating the flu. They're about allowing us to live with this virus. It was not about elimination. The premiers of Queensland and Western Australia, and I think there needs to be a lot more questions asked of them of why their vaccine rollouts are so slow, why they have fallen behind the other parts of this nation, and why it is that they are not trying to get their communities back to normal. That's really the question that should be asked here, because our nation was built to be whole, not to be separate.
On that 70% though, who do you think's willing within the federal government to agree with you on that? Because as I said, that modelling will mean more deaths. It's also a number that doesn't include anyone under the age of 16 when other countries are giving the vaccinations already en masse to 12 to 15-year-olds. So what's your message to a parent of a 12 to 15-year-old worried about COVID?
Well, Tom, that's a really good question, and I'm very concerned about that. And as you know, the TGA has now approved vaccinations for 12 to 15-year-olds, but once again, ATAGI is lagging in its advice to government, and it is probably time that ATAGI actually gave that advice and we could get on with the job of vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds. I think that is critical. But the truth of the matter is, when you go back to this vaccinating Australians was about letting us get back to normal life and being able to live with the virus. Otherwise, people who make the other argument are making the argument for permanent lockdowns, and they should be honest enough to say that.
But so on talking about it being critical, shouldn't 12 to 15-year-olds then, if everything about giving them the vaccine is safe, why not include them in the percentage rollout? Otherwise, by the time things open up in New South Wales, given they're last in the rollout, if you like, they won't have an opportunity to vaccinate their children before sending them back to school.
Tom, once again, that's a really good question. It's probably a question best left to health officials. But as I say, I agree with you. I think that vaccination of children is critical, and it is something that I know that has been approved by the TGA, and I know that the federal government has been pushing for quite heavily.
If you look at a state such as Queensland, they're looking at New South Wales and seeing the cases there. When we all reach vaccination targets, it's probable you could be in the thousands of cases per day. If you're that leader, is there really that much harm maybe in waiting just one more month, seeing what opening up with vaccinations actually means, and then making a call, having been under lockdowns for so long? Why not wait one more month if you're Queensland?
Sure, one more month. I mean, Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania, the ACT, are roughly at the current run rate, will probably be a month or two behind New South Wales. But what the Kingdom of Narnia and what Queensland are talking about is 5-6 months of being locked down. And furthermore, Mark McGowan is suggesting that the rest of Australia should wait for him to catch up. That's not right, Tom.
We've got to leave it there, a bit short on time, but I appreciate your time. Jason Falinski, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.